Welcome to Persons of Interest, a podcast featuring interviews with interesting people doing interesting things, diving into careers, personal stories, life lessons, and more. Here's your host, Derek Dockett.
The Persons of Interest podcast is back with another episode. I say it time and time again how excited I am to have a guest on. Again, this is another one. Piggybacking off the last episode I had with Anthony Shavies. I hope you guys enjoyed that one because I did not expect that we would go as long as we did with Anthony Shavies, but I thought it was going to be a 30-minute conversation. I was going to let him be, but we told some great stories, and now I'm excited because this is a great way to follow up what he talked about. Longtime Missouri State beat writer working for the Springfield News Leader. Now he's doing a number of other part-time projects that I'll ask him about, including doing some things with a new journalist venture with the Springfield Citizen. But Lyndal Scranton, appreciate you taking the time, sir. How are things going for you these days?
Hey, Derek, thanks so much for the invitation to come on your show. It's a pleasure to be here. Things are going good, staying busy, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially these time of days. I know we're dealing with a lot of uncertainty and things that are going on, but obviously any way you can find the time to do things that you enjoy, do things that you're good at, it's always great. I've always enjoyed reading your writings, obviously specifically being a Bears basketball fan and my time working in the Valley and getting to know you there. But I guess there was a number of things I wanted to ask you about. But over this past weekend, as we record here on Wednesday, March 2nd, really, I've been wanting to do this conversation for a while, but you sent out the tweet asking about a little Bears basketball history, so I wanted to start there. I guess we'll jump into this. You recently, the Springfield, tell me about your new adventure with the Citizen, what's going on there. I know they've assembled a great amount of talent in terms of journalism and writers to provide a new, different approach to covering media and press down in Springfield, Missouri, and you're on the sports beat. So tell me about that new project that's happening down there now.
Yep, the Springfield Daily Citizen, sgfcitizen.org, a new model of newspaper, online only. It's digital only, no print edition. It's a nonprofit model. This was set up, some local business people thought that, and there's no secret that the newspapers, the traditional newspapers, are struggling to cover the news, all the corporate cutbacks that they have to suffer through. My good buddy Wyatt Wheeler is a one-man sports staff, and he does a tremendous job. There are some great folks still over there doing on the news beat that do great jobs, but they just can't cover everything. So the Citizen comes in and is hoping to be hyper-local. The goal is to cover local news, tell good local stories. The nonprofit model is you're not owned by people in a corporation on the East Coast who are looking to bleed every dollar for their shareholders. These are local folks who are committed to, through their model, through their sponsorships and donations, and a subscription model that will eventually come along for folks who read this, to eventually make a little bit of money on this and become self-sustaining. I think there's a reporting staff of 7 and a staff of 11 overall at the Citizen. I'm on a freelance basis along with several other former news leader people who just contribute stories. I'm doing 2 sports stories a week, a trial run to see how sports is received in this new adventure, to see how folks like it.
Nice. I mentioned you wrote something that piqued my interest, and I've been wanting to do this topic more in my goal would be to do like a panel. I'd love to get yourself, Art Haynes, I don't know, Rick Kindhart maybe, just some folks that have been around Missouri State for years that have seen it all, because I'm only familiar from 1997 on. My freshman year down there, the roster then, and just coincides to be with Jackie Stiles' freshman year. I guess I call it a little bit of the golden era of 1999, men's basketball Sweet 16, the Lady Bears go on their run. Of course, we know what happens in 2001. The baseball team starts clicking all cylinders. 2003 happens. Soccer has success. Swimming always has success. And just lots of positive things happening with athletics in Missouri State at that time. But specifically talking about basketball, had never heard of this school until I came to campus and visited and ended up going to school down there. So my familiarity and my memories of it are just from that point on. you have more extensive knowledge. So when you pose the question of asking folks about their 10 favorite players, and you put the caveat on it of what you've seen, and right. I did my list, the caveat of what I've seen. I was looking through the feed, the responses that we got, and spurred some good conversation. But my first question is, if you were to describe 3 players to me: Curtis Perry, Winston Garland, Daryl Garrison, because I know those guys, those jerseys are hanging in the rafters, historic players. How would you describe those players to people like me who have not seen them play?
Yeah, Curtis Perry played in the late 60s. His senior year was 69-70. Led the Bears to the NCAA Division II championship game where they lost in the final. I was young when I saw Curtis, but I do remember seeing Curtis play. He towered over people. He was 6'7", 6'8", powerful, athletic, you name it. He had the whole package. And the guy went on and played 8 years in the NBA and won a championship with the Milwaukee Bucks. Played for the Phoenix Suns, a team that reached the finals in the mid-'70s. Guy was a legit talent who wound up at Missouri State. They say that his freshman year, the team probably would have beaten Earl Monroe and Winston-Salem in the Division II championship, but freshmen were ineligible to play in postseason at that time. So they were minus Curtis, still went to the championship game and were beaten by Earl Monroe. But he was just a towering powerful player, I would say. And then you move on to taking them chronologically to Daryl Garrison, who played in the 72 to 76 era, I believe it was. And he also led his team to the national championship game where they lost to Morgan State, and Marvin Webster went on to play in the NBA. Garrison, just a terrific scorer. As I recall, he was similar in size to what Isaiah Mosley is today and scored in many ways. And this was before the three-point shot. There's no telling how many points that they all would have scored if they had the three-pointer. And he's the school's career scoring all-time leader now. And that's what spurred this list on, was I was writing a column on Isaiah Mosley, because if he sticks around next year and stays healthy, he's going to be the school's career scoring leader. He'll pass Garrison and be the all-time great Bear scorer. And I wanted to get a sense, or give people a sense of where I thought maybe he fits into the history of the school's best players. And certainly he's headed that direction and deserves to be in the discussion. And that's where I decided to do a little sidebar, just breaking out my own top 10. But that's where that idea came from, was exploring Isaiah Mosley. Then we move on to Winston Garland, who is the greatest in the Division I era. Of course, he came along at the perfect time as the school was just trying to establish itself as a Division I program, 85 to 87. Led the Bears to their first postseason play in 86 with the NIT. Two of the greatest atmospheres I've ever seen when the Bears hosted Pittsburgh and Marquette in the old Hammond Student Center, standing room only, the fire marshals turning people away.
I've heard those stories.
Just an awesome atmosphere. And that's the first taste anybody had of Division I basketball, what it could be at Missouri State, or then Southwest Missouri State. And of course, the next year, Winston leads the Bears to the NCAA tournament for the first time and beats Clemson in the first round, loses to Danny Manning and the Jayhawks in the second round. But he also goes on and has a nice NBA career, I think parts of 7 seasons. And now his son's making big waves with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Darius Garland. Those three were the top 3. Perry, Garland, and Garrison is how I ranked them.
Nice. So I tweeted back my list, again, 1997 to present, and in no order. And these are mostly for me. When I read through your question, I'm like, okay, for me, impact. Who first pops in my head? Kyle Weems, Alizé Johnson, Blake Ahern, Danny Moore, Scott Brakebill, Tulio Da Silva, Isaiah Mosley, Gage Prim, Kevin All. And even though I never saw him play, I initially went with Curtis Perry, thinking, and then it hit me. I'm like, man, wait a minute. There's other Bears jerseys hanging in the rafters, and I went that route because I couldn't think of a 10th player to put in that I thought gave me that impact from my era, 97 on. So that's why I went that route. And then I was looking at my list again, and I'm like, okay, I did that without looking at the media guide. So I went back in and dug in. I'm like, if I were to take 10 and create a roster all-time Bears that I thought could take on any team and have success, I was thinking to myself, okay, that's not too bad. I've got some bigs with Prim, Brakebill. Brakebill was so versatile. I don't know how many people remember watching him play, but just so versatile. But I started thinking about some of all the players from the late 90s, early 2000s that I thought were great, and what really hit me was Alan Phillips. Wasn't here for 4 years, but part of that Sweet 16 team, one of those swing players, could score different ways. We've had a lot of these guys that have been such great role players. It surprises me, and I don't know what to account it to, but it just surprises me how much talent has come through Springfield, and we've only had 1999.
Yeah, that is astounding when you think about it. So many near misses over the last 20 plus years. You mentioned earlier about putting a panel together. Back in it was on the school's 100th anniversary, the centennial of the school in, I think, 2008, 2009. I actually did that. I put together a list of Art and Ned Reynolds and several people, about 20 people trying to get, and I had them do their own rankings, and I didn't see anybody pre-1967 or couldn't remember them, and there's some great players. But I was able to compile my own top 20 list based on their input. So we did that and had a series in the paper where we released one a day, counting it down 20 to 1. So that was a lot of fun to do. And I think Rick had that in the media guide for a few years after that, and I'm sure he probably still has that list somewhere.
Yeah. Mark Stillwell will probably be another great one, too. He's seen so much of that history. Gotta love Stilly. Fast forward to 2022, since you're back doing some coverage now, the Bears, as we get ready to talk here, the conference tournament, Arch Madness is getting ready to start. It's great to have you, another writer, or someone else covering. Wyatt's been doing a great job, but I always love the extra voices because, again, it's the team that I follow the most closely since I'm a college basketball nut, and it's my alma mater. But your thoughts on the current team as they head into the conference tournament and the outlook for this coming weekend of what might happen, their chances at maybe breaking that drought since 1999.
Yeah, you've been there. I've seen this program get close so many times. I think it's 5 times they've been in the championship game since 99 and haven't been able to get it done. It sets up nicely for them when you look at this year with 8-0 against the teams on their side of the bracket. And they always say it's hard to beat a team 3 times. And Dwight and I always laugh about that. I said, well, you beat them twice. There's no reason you shouldn't beat them a 3rd time.
Bingo.
So you look at that either way. I guess it could be hard to beat a team 3 times if the games were close. But the Bears have pretty well dominated the opponents on that side of the bracket. Now that comes to Sunday, and depth may be an issue. The Bears aren't the deepest team in the world with only 8 healthy players. There's DeMarcus Sharp may or may not return from a foot injury. He could give them some much-needed depth for the weekend if he's able to go. But I think the Bears set up nicely to get to Sunday and face either I would guess Loyola, or I'm going to say Loyola or Bradley. I think whoever wins that 4-5 game on Friday, which is shaping up to be a tremendous game, I think they go to the finals and get past Northern Iowa, Northern Iowa's had a nice run, but I just don't know that they're as good as the number 1 seed should be, but we'll see.
I think the one thing we all know is that anything can happen, especially after last year with Valpo reaching the finals. But it's always shaped up that something wacky, someone will get hot. That's what this time of year is all about: getting hot at the right time. That unsung hero or your go-to player doing what they need to do. I'm thinking back to the 2011 tournament where the Bears played in the final against Indiana State, came up short there, but a game against Southern Illinois. Just a knockdown, drag out. I think it was like a 50 game was in the 50s for the final, but the Bears needed a bucket from Weems to get past Southern to win that game. And it was just a grind. It was not what they had normally been playing up to that point. So I'm thinking, who knows what could happen? It's going to be interesting. Bradley's, you mentioned Bradley. They've been playing so well of late, maybe one of the hottest teams coming into the tournament. I wouldn't be shocked to see them go on a run and knock some teams off, but who knows?
Yeah, Brian Wardle seems to have Bradley going this time of the year. They've won the tournament twice in recent years, including 2020 when they couldn't go to the NCAA tournament. But I wouldn't be at all surprised to see a Bradley Missouri State final on Sunday, or it could be it's totally different than that. Who knows? Do you want to go on the record with an official pick or no? If I had to make an official pick, I would say Loyola, Missouri State on Sunday, with Loyola probably winning. It's hard to say with any confidence that the Bears are going to win this tournament, but certainly they're way overdue to do.
I participate. I don't know if you've ever seen on Twitter the Jerome. It's a pick'em contest of conference tournaments, and you just flat out pick who you think will win each tournament. And this week it's all started. I believe the SoCon tournament started already, so you had to have your picks in by 11 o'clock today for all of the tournaments that were this week. So that includes the Missouri Valley. So it's SoCon, it's America East, the Valley, OVC, all those the conferences that all get started this week. So I had to pick a Missouri Valley winner.
Right?
I did not pick the Bears.
Okay.
I picked Loyola, and I don't even know why. I just think they might be out for revenge after stumbling the last game, and last week maybe out for revenge. And I don't know why I just never like to pick against them, and maybe it's the experience fact. I don't know. I picked Loyola. So
that makes sense. That was a classic between them and Northern Iowa.
Yeah.
In the regular season finale. But man, I remember 30 years ago. It's 30 years ago since the Bears won their only Missouri Valley tournament.
Yeah. Wow. Goodness.
At the old barn. And what a night that was, with Jackie Crawford, the little 5'8" guard, winning MVP honors at the tournament to lead the Bears. And Johnny Murdoch was a freshman, and Spoon was his final Valley tournament game as his Bears coach. So that a lot of time has passed since then.
Yeah. One more Bears basketball note before I want to switch topics on you. Everything that you've covered in your time being on the beat for the Bears, is there one moment, if you can take 1999 out of it, take the Sweet 16 out of it, because I know that sticks out, because how many times does a program like Missouri State, Southwest Missouri State, get to play Duke? But is there a moment that stands out for you as something that is on the court or off the court, something that stands out as special? It could be a hire, an interview, a player achieving something. For those of us that follow this team closely, and every program has those, they have things that stand out to them that make them special and that just sticks in their head. Anything like that for you that sticks out in your time covering Missouri State?
I think there's probably two. It's the 1987 NCAA tournament in Atlanta, where the Bears go and beat Clemson. It's so new. It's a new experience for the community to have a team doing this at that level. We were writing for both an AM and PM newspaper at that time. We were doing stories, and as soon as the game ended, for the afternoon paper, because it was an early tip-off that day in Atlanta. They were flying newspapers from Springfield to Atlanta for the fans who were there, so they could see it the next morning. Just a really cool experience. Then 2011, the Bears winning their only regular season title with an almost full JQH arena. That was amazing.
I was there for that one.
Yeah, I know you were. And I always remember Kyle Weems jumping up onto the press table just inches away from my laptop, celebrating. And I was so focused, I had to get a story turned in. I couldn't pay attention to what Kyle was doing. I was glad he didn't land on my laptop.
Yeah, I was at that same table because that game was on ESPN2, and I was doing the official stats on headset for that game. And that season, that 2010-11 season, was so special with the games against Northern Iowa, Creighton, and Wichita in the regular season. Had not seen, and I don't think we still have seen that building, that ruckus, that packed, energized, electric for those games against those rivals. Just such a special year. Hopefully the Bears can do something special this weekend, and that NCAA drought could just be history, and something special could be ahead of us. So we'll see what happens.
And I know everybody's tired of talking about how long it's been. We're ready to end the drought, and I always root for the best storyline, and that would be a tremendous storyline.
Yep, absolutely. I also want to ask you, because another project that you have inspired me about 2-3 summers ago. I can't even know how long it's been now, but you were doing, I guess, podcast, maybe I don't know if it went from podcast to radio to podcast, and both, talking a little barbecue. And I don't think I ever knew that you had such a strong barbecue interest when I was a student at Missouri State. I guess I just don't remember it being front of mind, especially I would have known, like, during the Henson years, you'd be, talking all kinds of things like that with them. But the Tailgate Guys, you were my inspiration on buying a smoker, albeit I bought a cheater. I have an electric smoker. But tell the folks about the Tailgate Guys and let's talk a little competition barbecue.
Yeah, I was the ultimate hobby barbecue guy while I was in the newspaper business, and just do it on weekends. Steve Kaler, the longtime fellow news leader employee, was a neighbor of mine. We'd always be out cooking on weekends, and we thought, hey, it'd be cool. This happened after I left in 2015, late in 2015. I said, it'd be cool if we could do a barbecue radio show, and talk sports as well. We call it Tailgate Guys. We'll combine those two passions of sports and barbecuing. And we just laughed it off, thinking that would never happen. But I, in passing, mentioned it to Tom Ladd, who was in the radio business, the voice of the Lady Bears, and he heard me mention that and said, I think I can make that happen. He was looking for some new shows to put on in the local markets. Went on as the Tailgate Guys radio show in January of 2016. Now, I don't know if that's very intelligent to start a barbecue show in the middle of winter. It was, I think, 5 degrees the morning we debuted the show. It was on Saturday mornings. But we did that show on local radio for 3 years and in a very low frequency signal. So I'm not sure how many people heard that on local radio, but decided to switch it over to podcast in 2019. The best move that we ever, I've had people download the show in 67 countries and
awesome,
all across the USA, of course, and have some loyal listeners. And we've been able to talk to the biggest names in barbecue since then. Some of my heroes that I used to see on TV cooking, I've been able to have them on the show, and that's morphed into crossover into competition barbecue now, where it's the Tailgate Guys competition team along with the podcast. It's been a labor of love to do those things the last, going on 6 years now.
Awesome. Obviously, you shared on Twitter, and I always loved barbecue restaurants. I'd never, ever given a thought of cooking my own. It actually, prior to me buying a smoker, sounded actually challenging and daunting. Like, why in the world? How would I know how to cook a rack of ribs? And then I just got to listening more and more. And then I started finding videos and websites and watching stuff on TV. And I'm like, So I started researching, and I remember reaching out to you about smokers, and I'm like, oh, that sounds way too challenging. A gas grill at the time, and I'm like, I don't do charcoal anymore. I'm not really ready to control a fire. And a friend of mine had shared some brisket that he cooked and said, I made this on an electric smoker. And I remember reaching out like, hey, what do you know about these things? You're like, well, not for me. I've known people that get great results out of it. It's a different thing, but personal preference. So I started looking into it, and I remember the one that I thought I was going to buy was one of those chest type where it's got the door on it and the shelf. I did not go with that one. I ended up going with the Traeger. This is not an advertisement in the podcast, but I bought the lowest level Traeger with the pellets, and it's from that point on has been no looking back. Best purchase I've ever made, because not only have I less frequently been at barbecue restaurants, because I'm sure you probably agree, there's more pride when you're making your own, but now I'm like thinking of all the different things, like why did I not try cooking that or eating that, whatever. Like I've done brisket, I've done ribs, I've done pulled pork, chicken. I do turkey every Thanksgiving for my family now in the smoker. Sure. So it's become more of a labor of love for me too. Every Sunday I feel I have to cook something and have food lunch for the week is my thing. My question for you, what's your favorite thing to throw on the grill on a week?
First off, I'll just say that people, you can throw anything on a smoker, vegetables, you can even make desserts on smokers. So it's like an outdoor kitchen for me, especially in the warm weather months. My favorite would be, always has been, I'm partial to ribs, St. Louis cut pork spare ribs. I think if you can learn to cook ribs to the right tenderness, you can cook anything. Yeah. I think there's a fine line there of getting ribs, either leaving them underdone or getting them overdone. You master your fire and heat management to get the ribs, you're on your way. So that'll always be my favorite. Although, we had a tough year in 2021 on the judges didn't like our ribs very much. So we're trying to correct that this year. Brisket is becoming more and more my number 2 or my number 1A, I guess you'd say, favorite. Brisket. There's nothing more rewarding in barbecue than cooking a brisket perfectly.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The trouble with brisket is it's not an inexpensive cut of meat, especially these days. So you have to pick your spots to cook a brisket because you don't want to mess it up. It just costs too much. I'd say ribs and brisket closely following behind.
Nice. I have only done the full packer brisket once. It did not turn out well. So I've now gone to finding either the pre-cut, already trimmed brisket flat, a little bit cheaper, not buying the whole thing, or there's a meat shop locally near where I live, and they will sell a full one that's already pre-trimmed. I just got to cook it properly. And I've done that once when we had a family gathering here and there. But it can be challenging. But I think the one thing I've learned is patience. It's obviously it's not full-fledged fire. It's keeping it, and again, I'm saying this similar with an electric one. I just set the dial to 275, 180, whatever it is, and let it do its thing. And I'm cooking to temperature, not to time. And that's the one thing I learned. You're cooking to temperature, not to time. So it's when you cook something great, it's awesome. Which leads to my next question. You said you guys had the challenging with the ribs, but isn't so much of it personal preference? Like, how tough is it when you do these competitions? Because aren't you cooking to what Judge A may like and Judge B may not like? How does that work out with these competitions?
The certified KCBS judges have to take a class where they go by certain guidelines.
Okay.
And now since you're scored in 3 categories: appearance, where you want to make it look as pretty as possible, and you have your greenery in the box, which is a little bit excessive for the regular people to understand. But you want to make it to look pretty because they say you eat with your eyes to start off. The second criteria is, and these are weighted with appearance the least of your score. Middle part of your score is tenderness. You know, a rib, for instance, you hear about fall off the bone ribs. Yeah. Everybody loves fall off the bone ribs. Certainly people who eat at home or eat in a restaurant probably do love fall off the bone ribs, and so do I. But the mark of a perfectly cooked rib is not falling off the bone. It's to take a bite that's clean, and the rest of the meat around that bite stays on the bone, and that shows that the rib is cooked, not overdone, it's not underdone. If it has a clean bite with the rest of the meat staying in place, that's what you're looking for. That's a perfect score on a tenderness. And then, of course, the most weighted score is the taste, and that is where it is subjective. And there's nothing more frustrating than to go to a contest, and this even happens to the World Championship cooks that I talk to. They're as frustrated a lot of times as the rest of us that they think they've cooked a wonderful tasting rib, and 2 of the 6 judges ding them on the taste score, and that kills your chances to win. Yeah, it's a thing that you have to really have patience with the judges, because it doesn't always go your way, even though you think you cooked a great piece of meat.
Taking competitions out of it, where do you fall in terms of sauce? Are you a sweet, spicy, you make your own? What's your go-to in terms of sauces? Or maybe are you sauce at all?
Before I started competing, I would always be sauce on the side.
Okay.
It would be more of a sweet sauce that I enjoyed, a Kansas City style sauce. In competition, the judges love the sauce. You have to sauce your meat. You even sauce your brisket, believe it or not, at least lightly in competition barbecue, which would be unheard of in Texas, certainly.
Yeah.
Never sauce a piece but you always want to apply your sauce, put it on near the end of the process. Don't put it on too early. You don't want to burn it. Put it on lightly so it'll set and give a nice shine. You want some shine to your meat, and you don't want it spicy. That's one thing I've found the judges do not want. You don't want to offend the judges. You want to be middle of the road, not give them diabetes too sweet, certainly, but also not give them anything too spicy. Play that middle of the road as best you can and get the tenderness. That's the main thing.
Nice. I have found certain things that I like, and when I've cooked things for others, they tend to like them. Like, I've migrated to a certain type of seasoning. I've migrated to a certain type of sauce that I continuously buy. If you were to give a barbecue novice, and I still consider myself a novice, although a buddy of mine, we're doing another podcast now, and since we both have Traegers and we've both enjoyed doing it, we've ventured outside of the rib, brisket, pulled pork thing. I'm now trying tri-tip. I've done, like I said, turkey every Thanksgiving now. I'm gonna try rib tips this weekend. I've done regulars, but I've never done those before. Found those at a grocery store. For you, is there you're making your seasonings, you find something you like, what's your seasoning go-to? And if you're making, what's your number one, you mentioned the ribs, but your number one go-to, if you really want to impress somebody of a meal, what are you cooking for them?
That's a good question. I think the baseline of barbecue is pulled pork. It's cooking a pork butt, a big old 8 to 10 pound pork butt. That's something that I think is, and talking to guys who own restaurants, that's the number one item people measure your restaurant on is pulled pork. If you can do the pulled pork, you're going to please just about anybody. And that's where you can, it's more forgiving too. You can make a mistake more with pork butt and recover and make it taste good. If you've done something wrong during the cook, you can recover it better by saucing it up or adding some extra spices and so forth. But yeah, I would say pork butt. And if you want to go big, get a brisket. If you're having a small gathering, you can't feed too many people on a brisket, right? Because it's not a cheap meat. But to do that, and I would also offer the tip. You mentioned it earlier. don't go by time, go by color and temperature and tenderness when you're figuring out when the meat is over. You hear about this 2-2-1 method for ribs. That's just garbage. You're liable to burn your ribs up.
Yeah.
Because different cookers go different temperatures, different lengths of time, like one of these champions have told us on our barbecue show. Good barbecue is done when it's done.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the same type of meat. 1 8-pound pork butt might take 5 hours. Another one might take 5.5 hours. You just have to keep your eye on the color and the temp and the probe.
That's definitely what I've learned. I have a digital one that I keep on that thing that works wirelessly so I can monitor it with my phone. I've got a probe. I go and check the thing in different spots. I don't know. I've gotten so much into it now. I've got all these gadgets to help me do it. And like I said, I've got an electric smoker, so I know my temperature varies. Once I realized I have a hot spot on the grill, I learned all these things about it. It's been fun. Like I said, I had no idea I would like it so much, but I'm going to say this, and my wife may shoot me, but I'm now thinking of getting a bigger Traeger at some point too, because I love cooking it so much. Again, I thought about it at the time. I have no interest in controlling a fire, but the electric and the pellets, that's my thing now. So
yeah, those pellets are good. There are a lot of guys are using those and doing well on the competition circuit.
Yeah.
And I've only cooked on one once. I borrowed or I used it. We were at Memphis in May 3 years ago. I was helping a team, and they were using a pellet smoker. It was a big commercial type of pellet smoker to cook a bunch of pork shoulders that our team was doing. And they had a Wagyu brisket they asked me to cook for them. So I cooked it on the pellets. It turned out great. So I'd love to have one for my backyard. That's probably my next purchase if I'm able to add another one to my arsenal. I already have 7. So I don't know if I need an 8th smoker, but
sure you do.
That's on the list, though.
Sure you do, because then you can cook everything at once. And like you said, on the electric, on the smokers, I mean, in the Traeger app that I have, they're talking about cooking pizza, vegetables, all kinds of stuff, recipes in there, which honestly, that's one of the things that once I looked up that the app of when you buy a smoker, it's got it in there. And I'm like, wow, you can make all this stuff in there. It's not just ribs. It's not just brisket, all these things. Like I've done salmon on mine before. Just great. It's phenomenal. So I would highly encourage anybody that's thinking about it, take a look. If the electric isn't for you and you like the charcoal and the wood chips or any of that, check it out. Because the other thing that I found, and I actually feel bad about this because there's so many great restaurants that I love visiting, especially here in St. Louis, that I'm finding myself going to barbecue restaurants fewer because I can just go and buy the meat myself and cook it, and I take a little bit more pride in preparing it myself. I always like to support those businesses, but at the same time, I like cooking it myself. It's a little bit of a labor of love. So,
yes, I get the question all the time. What's your favorite place to go when you go to Kansas City or St. Louis or even in Springfield? What's your favorite restaurant? Well, we have some good ones.
Yeah.
I don't go often because I cook it at home. So that's what I like to do. And it's rewarding, relaxing. It's something I love to do.
Nice. So I really appreciate your time. This has been awesome to catch up with you. I hope you guys give Lyndal a follow. If you're not following him on Twitter already, his Twitter is at Lyndal Scranton, LYNDALSCRANTON. We didn't even talk about Lucas Speedway. Touch on that for a little bit. Your work there. You've been doing PR work as well for the dirt track racing.
Yep, Lucas Oil Speedway, located in Wheatland, Missouri, about an hour north of Springfield. It's one of the nicest facilities in the country. It's a dirt track. Has an off-road track. It has a drag boat facility. It has a go-kart track. I compare it a lot to going to a minor league baseball game at a nice stadium. It's family friendly, a lot of things for the kids to do. But the season runs from April through October, and I run their PR for them. They want stories year round. They want to spread the word about Lucas Oil Speedway, and it's been a real blessing to work for those folks. And racing's also another one of my longtime passions, so it's been fun to do that. In addition to the other projects and the barbecue podcast and all that stuff. And I'd love for folks to follow us there too. We're on Facebook at Tailgate Guys BBQ and on Twitter at Tailgate Guys 999.
Yeah, I was going to give you the shout out there. Give them the follow on the barbecue podcast. I'm a listener. I love it. I always hear something that's interesting, even though, like I said, I call myself the cheater smoker with the electric, but I love that, and I love watching the TV show. So it's always interesting to see what the pros are up to and hearing their thoughts on things. It's fun. Sir, it's Arch Man this weekend. Looking forward to watching some basketball, regardless of what happens with the Bears, because March is a great time for college basketball fans. Look forward to reading your work, the Springfield at SGF Citizen. Give them a shout out too. as you've been writing there for the Springfield Daily Citizen. Lyndal Scranton, thank you so much for your time all the way from Springfield, Missouri. It's been a pleasure, sir, and as always, keep up the great work.
Derek, thanks. It's been a lot of fun to talk basketball and barbecue and everything else in between, and it's been a blast. Hope we can do it again.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Persons of Interest. This podcast is a personal project with the goal of sharing stories that might inspire others to create their own path. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a guest suggestion, you can reach Derek on Twitter @DDocket. This has been Persons of Interest.